Hello everyone, Pop Culture Junkie here. Today we're going to do a review on a classic WWF pay-per-view. This is the 1991 WWF Survivor Series. Took place on November 27th, 1991. This is the 5th annual Survivor Series, and it was unique in a lot of ways. Number one, as you can see here, it's titled Survivor Series, The Greatest Challenge. That's the first time they ever put any kind of little subtitle on there. Next thing, this is the first time we ever had a singles match. We never had singles matches on Survivor Series. Survivor Series was always more of an all-star kind of game style pay-per-view. Because like in baseball, basketball, you get the all-star games where you'll take a couple of guys from different teams and make a team out of them, and then take some other guys on other teams and make one team out of that, and then you get to see them play a game against each other. You don't always get to see that in different sports, so it was unique because you would get to see pairings and matchups of different players that you would never think working together, and it's interesting sight to see. Survivor Series, same setup. You get to see groups of wrestlers put into teams that you normally wouldn't see working together and facing other teams of guys you wouldn't see working against each other. So Survivor Series used to be a really unique concept because of this, getting to see matchups with wrestlers that you just couldn't see anywhere else, whether it was on a pay-per-view or a house show even. So Survivor Series, if you don't know, it's a Survivor Series style is where you take a group of, let's say, 4 wrestlers and put them against 4 wrestlers, and it's an elimination style match where the team with the team that does not have any survivors, as in whoever loses all their people in matches, that team, the opposite team, becomes the winner, and whoever is remaining are the quote-unquote survivors. So this card was made up of one big match, a lot like how some pay-per-views are nowadays. Survivor Series was built on the main event, which was WWF Champion Hulk Hogan versus The Undertaker. Now, there are interesting things about this is, first of all, you have a world title match on Survivor Series pay-per-view. That had never happened before. On top of that, it's a singles match, and that had never happened before. Another thing to point out is, this is 1991 Survivor Series. This is The Undertaker, who had just made his debut at the 1990 Survivor Series. So he is just finishing his rookie year, and he's got a world title shot against the icon of WWF, Hulk Hogan. So very interesting concept to point out there. So I'm going to start off with the main event, and then we'll go through the rest of the card, because the main event was, again, the main reason for this pay-per-view. So in the match, we had Hulk Hogan against The Undertaker. Unfortunately, it was not the greatest match. There was not a whole lot of highlights. The choke slams and the top rope were Undertaker, does back then. It wasn't even called old school. It was just he'd climb up on a top rope and do a balance routine on the top rope, and then jump off and hit you in the back, which we now call old school. So in the match, like I said, unfortunately, it was not the greatest match. We had Ric Flair, Nature Boy Ric Flair, came down and interfered by putting a chair in the ring, a steel chair laid flat, and Undertaker set up Hogan to give him the Tombstone Pile Driver. Unfortunately, it was not good, as in they just did not do it right. Even somebody sitting up in the nosebleeds could look and see that Hogan's head was a good foot off the ground whenever Undertaker dropped to his knees, as in Hogan never even came close to hitting the chair, and it just looked like Undertaker scooped him up, turned him upside down, and then he fell on his knees, and then Hogan literally fell backwards onto his back. And it just looked bad. It didn't look like a good finisher. I mean, obviously, yeah, this is pro wrestling. We don't want to see Hogan's head slam, spike down into the chair, because that could cause some real damage. But it could have looked a lot better, and it just didn't. So my biggest upset of this, though, was everyone at the time, this is 1991, keep in mind, Ric Flair had just come to the WWF, and everyone who was a wrestling fan at this time was like, okay, this is going to be the time we finally see it. Ric Flair had been the NWA main top dude. Hogan had been WWF's main top dude. We were finally going to see Hogan versus Flair. We had been waiting for it for years. Now that Hogan was losing the title, and it was at the cause of interference from Ric Flair, we're thinking, great, that sets up the match. It's going to be revenge for Hogan at WrestleMania 8. He's going to get his revenge on Flair for costing him the world title, and then Undertaker would go on to do something else against someone else, and we would have a fresh main event title match at WrestleMania 8 possibly. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Hogan won the world title back 2 days later at the Tuesday in Texas pay-per-view, which also had Ric Flair causing some more interference, and that inevitably led up to Hogan being stripped of the belt, and the world title was put on the line at the Rumble match, and Ric Flair won the Rumble, which led to Savage against Ric Flair, and unfortunately led later on to Hogan versus Sid, which we won't even get into. So that was the match that the card was, the whole pay-per-view was built on, was Hogan, Undertaker, world title. Still unique for all those little tidbits of info I shared, but unfortunately the match just wasn't able to live up to the hype. Alright, we're going to flip over, and first of all I just want to point out, this is the Coliseum home video of the Survivor Series. These tapes are just amazing, in my opinion. They always have such great covers. I like the big clamshell style. These, if you find them anywhere, grab them. They're just so hard to find, and they're just great. So, just want to point that out. Alright, we're going to flip over here. Already covered main event, so we're going to go now. The rest of the card was made up of 4 Survivor Series style tag team matches. So, first on the card was the 8-man tag match of, captained by Bret the Hitman Hart. Captained by Roddy Piper. His partner, the Intercontinental Champion Bret Hart, who had just won the Intercontinental title from Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam earlier that year. Their partner was Virgil and British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith. Their opponents, captained by Nature Boy Ric Flair, $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, the Warlord, and the Mountie. Now, the great thing with this tag team setup is we actually kind of had storyline involvement, because at the time we had Bret Hart with the Intercontinental title. He was about to begin a feud with the Mountie, which Mountie would win the belt from him. We had Ted DiBiase still in a feud with Virgil, and we had Roddy Piper in a feud with Ric Flair. Now, it's like I said earlier, this didn't always happen at Survivor Series. Sometimes they would just grab random participants and put them in a match, but this one actually had all 4 guys on this side had a beef with all 4 of these guys. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Warlord and Bulldog. These were the 2 powerhouses at the time in WWF, so they were all about power, and they had just recently had a match at WrestleMania 7 earlier that year, and they still were continuing the feud. Yes, this is back when feuds would last almost a whole year, if not longer, whereas these days we get 3 weeks and a feud is over and something new starts. Anyways, the match itself was decent. You had some good spots between the Warlord and Bulldog, and Piper and Flair. In the end, Ric Flair was the sole survivor of the match. Next on the card was Captain Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Sergeant Slaughter, El Matador Tito Santana, and the Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich versus Colonel Mustafa, also known as the Iron Sheik, the Berserker, the Barbarian, and Skinner. This one was a big filler. It was a total domination by Duggan's team. Every one of his partners survived, and they defeated the team of Mustafa, Berserker, Skinner, and Barbarian. Next match, we've got tag team Survivor Series participants. We have the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, with Luke and Butch, the Bushwhackers, versus Brian Knobbs and Sags, the Nasty Boys, and Luke and Bo Beverly, the Beverly Brothers. This match was, again, nothing special, just the Nasty Boys and Beverly Brothers completely dominated, and they were the survivors. The interesting moment that happened in this match was there was a part in the match where Jannetty and Michaels collided, causing Michaels to be eliminated, or caused the distraction to where Michaels was rolled up and pinned, and that added to the soon inevitable breakup of the Rockers. They were getting ready to split them off and make Shawn Michaels a singles wrestler. So that was a little moment there. And the last match on the card, we have Legion of Doom and Big Boss Man versus Natural Disasters, Earthquake and Typhoon again, and Erwin R. Shyster. Now this is a 6-man tag versus the usual 8 that we see down below. And the reason for this is the original tag team was on the LOD and Big Boss Man's team. It was supposed to be Macho Man Randy Savage. And on IRS and Natural Disasters team, it was supposed to be Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, the reason this became a 6-man tag is because earlier, before the pay-per-view, a few weeks before on Superstars, or Wrestling Challenge, one of those two, there was a incident where Jake Roberts got Savage tied up in the ropes and had a Cobra attack Savage and bite his arm. Very graphic for the time, and fans in the audience were very scared and afraid for Macho Man. But because of this, President Jack Tunney at the time, that was their version of what we call the executive authority or the general manager of today. But President Jack Tunney gave the decision to pull both Savage and Roberts from the tag match. So it became a 6-man tag. Boss Man was eliminated within about 6 minutes by Erwin R. Shyster, and then LOD just dominated the three of the Disasters and IRS, and LOD was the sole survivors. So there we have it. That's the 1991 Survivor Series. Hope you enjoyed my quick review. If you like this and like to learn more about other random pop culture items and tidbits, please subscribe and like, and I will keep making these. Take care. Pop Culture Junkie signing out.